Okay, hi, hello everybody. I know it's been a while since I've posted any updates. As some of you might have seen from some of the previous streams, things have been kind of like technically difficult here on my end, but I've actually made a ton of progress in some of the stuffs that were giving me issues and frustrations and kind of confounding situations. You can already see some of those updates here. You probably have already also noticed like some kind of visual changes to what I've done. I'm going to try to run through those things and also try to show off some of the new features that I've implemented into the game thus far, or into the prototype. The first thing that I'm going to show off is actually probably the most noticeable, which is what's going on with the shader that I've been working on. So after like much confusion and frustration and deliberation and misunderstanding of what's going on here, I ended up reverting my project from using the HDRP to instead using the URP, the Universal Render Pipeline, because the way that custom passes were being, or custom override passes were kind of basically working within the HDRP was extremely computationally taxing on my machine and on my project in general. And not to mention also, it just wasn't working the way that I wanted it to. So if people remember, I was really trying to go for this like offset print look for my project. And I was able to achieve those results by using a combination of different things. So I have this kind of base mesh here, which you can see. And then you'll see that I have kind of, even if I scroll in a little bit in the game view, that things are offset with this kind of color overlay that I have here. And so the way that that's working is that I have this object here, and then in my assets in the URP forward render data setting, I added a custom, or not a custom, but just a render objects override, or render feature, I should say. And I made an override here that basically changes aspects of the shader and then uses the layer mask of the car, which you can see here, it's on its own layer, uses a layer mask of the car to then override a material on top of that. And I'm using this color, this misspelled color offset matte. And what that is, I won't be able to open this up in ShaderGraph just because it's a separate window and I just don't want to clog up the screen space too much. All this is doing, after much like consternation, all this is doing is that it's getting the base texture information of the mesh, and then it's tinting that or multiplying that by a color here. So whatever I want that color to be, I can change. I actually have to change the alpha value as a separate color, so I can change that alpha value here within the material. And then the most important thing is that then I can change the offset, the kind of vertex displacement of this, right? So that I'm getting that kind of offset look. I kind of found that setting this to be 0.1.1.1 is enough. Sorry about that. Just make sure that that's muted. 0.1.1.1. The only issue that I'm currently having with this, if I apply this, you can actually see that I'm applying this to multiple different things. But the only issue that I'm having is that this has to do with the object. So I have to make sure that the orientation of the object, right now it's based on the local y-axis. And you can see here the local y-axis for this object is facing backwards. So I just need to make sure to modify that in Blender with the source material. But once all of those are facing the right direction, this changing things on that y-axis will work just fine. So again, that's been a huge update. The shader graph for this is actually really, really simple. It's not too complex or verbose or anything like that. But it just took me a ton of research and a ton of time just to figure out this like really one simple step. And so I'm just displacing the vertices of the mesh forward. And this is actually pretty like economically, I would say if I press play here, it's like pretty economically viable, I would say. This is running, right? Great frame rate. below 60 right now because I'm not in maximum scene view, or whatever, it peaks up occasionally. But yeah, once this is in full screen, if I maximize on play here, this will look great. This will run at a good FPS. Obviously, it'll slow down a little bit. But one of the other big updates that I want to also highlight here is that I created this generator for generating scenery. I have some placeholder assets here. I'm going to tweak this a lot so that only one of certain types of assets will be generated, but that's okay. But if I click on this generate scenery button, that goes ahead and generates scenery within the kind of bounds of this collider, which is great. Again, I'm going to probably just be using like grass and bedrolls and maybe a flagpole or something like that, or maybe a tent is just a one-off instance of that. But yeah, I can kind of generate this as much as I want, so I can populate a kind of density of whatever plot that I need, or I can kind of clear the scenery if I feel like I've kind of done some overkill. This populates things, I think, at 20 at a time, so I can always kind of increment this however I want to, and I could probably even include a little, how could you say, a little variable here to kind of regulate that in real time. But this happens on the editor side, so it doesn't happen in the scene view. One reason why I wanted to do that and implement it that way is because I didn't want to have this generator be kind of completely random every time that I generated it, and I did want some flexibility to go in and edit some assets after the fact if I found that things by hand needed some adjustment or realignment. I felt like that would give me kind of the flexibility in order to do that. These things aren't kind of glued into place after that. It kind of generates these clones that then, if I wanted to take one of these objects, I can obviously move it into position, create some kind of stuff. But I wanted to create a generator to kind of create a semi-randomized assortment of that stuff. So yeah, so those are the two main updates. It might not seem like a lot, but I'm extremely proud of being able to get this shader graph to look the way that I want to. You'll also notice that it has a slight texture on the base mesh of this. This is actually a custom shader that I've made. It's very, very simple again, but it's using basically a screen space it's getting the screen space of this and then loading in this texture onto that screen space so that everything will kind of like look like it's on kind of paper material. And then again, this other material then is, has whatever color I choose for that, right? And then I can change the opacity or the alpha channel on that so that it can look more kind of flat, or, it can have some of that finer detail of the mesh come through. Obviously, not all of the objects are going to share this one shader or this one layer, but I think I'm going to try to follow that CMYK technique and just have each scene be kind of dedicated to having 4 colors. I am interested in trying to see about how those colors could blend or bleed together and create some interesting color math. That's a little bit beyond where I'm at right now. But I'm really happy again with how this looks. This is looking and running really great. I can generate the scenery, like I said, basically, whenever I want. So that can even be like during gameplay. Again, this stuff still needs changes and modifications, but things are starting to look really good. Shadow stuff needs some work still, but not too disillusioned with that. I feel like I can get to that stuff pretty quickly, and that'll be okay, especially now that I've changed things over to the URP. I have a little bit more flexibility. Okay, cool. That's kind of it for right now. I was going to kind of show some of the kind of back end here of this, but I actually feel like I'm just going to leave it there and let this video be kind of short and sweet. So some good development stuff. I look forward to posting more stuff about this on my blog, and looking forward to sharing more updates with you soon. I'm going to be taking a little bit of a vacation, so I'm glad to have gotten these things done by that time, but I'll be back pretty soon, so keep a lookout. Okay, bye.